I'm thankful for many things, JD, and one of the things I am thankful for is our next guest on the line is Odyssey NFL insider Peter King. And Peter, I read your column each and every week, and I gave your column a quarterback rating of 158.3. How does that make you feel, Peter?
Perfect.
Yes. Not only are you perfect, but Brock Purdy is perfect as well. Your perfection versus his perfection, which one's more difficult?
Oh, well, I bet he didn't have to stay up till 2:30 in the morning doing his job.
Exactly.
But, no, I don't know. The more he plays, the more I think people realize why when Kyle Shanahan discusses him, there really isn't any doubt in his mind anymore that the 49ers have their quarterback of the future. And for the next 2 or 3 years, obviously, next 2 years, I would say it's really going to help them because they're going to be able to keep more of their better players. And I mean, eventually, most likely, they're going to have to pay him like a big-time quarterback. But for now, the Niners are really in a golden opportunity, as everybody knows, to try to win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years. And they certainly, look, it's not going to be easy, Eagles. I do not join, I'm sure we'll discuss several things here, but I do not join the crowd saying, oh boy, I'm so worried about Kansas City, because I'm not. I think Kansas City is the best team in the AFC. And I think by the end of the year, they'll prove it. Now, are they the best team in the league? I don't know. I think there are 4 really good teams right now, including Baltimore and Philadelphia and Kansas City and San Francisco. And so we'll see what happens down the road. But I think that San Francisco is showing that they're going to be in the Derby when the games get most important.
Peter, what impressed you most specifically about Purdy's performance, going back to him just in the game against Tampa Bay?
I think there's 2 things about Purdy just in the last couple of weeks. You remember 2 weeks ago, everybody was saying, oh my God, he should never have, never have made that throw that he made, or whenever that was, last week or 2 weeks ago. But I am most impressed by how he layers the ball in over multiple defensive backs. Okay? He layered it to Brandon Ayuk right over Jamel Dean, who's a very good corner, the other day. And obviously, Ayuk took it to the house. And in the NFL, I believe, very rarely do you see Patrick Mahomes make a mistake like he made last night when he threw the end zone interception and he just didn't get the ball high and far enough. And that's one of the things that I think Purdy has done that is highly, highly impressive, which is basically layering the ball in, right over good NFL defenders. Second thing, I think, when I watch him right now, and, when I watched a lot of that game the other day, the other thing that impressed me is that, look, he is going to get some pressure, and he has gotten some pressure, but he's almost impervious to it, because after he gets a couple of real heavy pressures, he looks exactly the same. If he gets pressured two times in a row, he looks exactly the same, on his third throw, because I just think he's gotten used to. George Kittle told me this, I don't know, early on, maybe after his second or third game, but Kittle said, I think there's a great advantage for a player to play a lot of college games and to have some failures. And if you think of, I'm sure that this has to be true, that in the majority of his conference games, in the Big 12, at least early on, Brock Purdy was an underdog. And, he was facing teams with better talent. That is just showing up day after day after day in the NFL because without any question in my mind, he benefited from really having to struggle and with people really laying into him. Texas, Oklahoma, so to me, I think the one thing you always hear from NFL scouts, NFL GMs, man, I hate drafting a guy who's maybe only had one full year of college experience, and Brock Purdy basically had 4, and I think it's standing him in very good stead right now.
Peter King here on 95.7 The Game, and very good stead is where the Niners find themselves after 2 straight victories. How much of this is not only a byproduct of Brock Purdy being the real deal, as you said in your column, but also having Trent Williams back and Deebo Samuel and just what that threat of Deebo horizontally does for this offense vertically?
You've noticed now and you've seen in the last 2 games why, one of the things we've talked a lot about on this show is when possible, whenever possible, I think Kyle Shanahan really needs to spot some of the younger receivers in the lineup, if only because Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are such physical players, and they're tough guys. I mean, very, very rarely is a fast, physical player going to be able to last 17 weeks without getting nicked. I think it's pretty amazing, quite honestly, that Christian McCaffrey has been able to be so available ever since he got traded to the Niners. Because look, the book on him was he was starting to get hurt a little bit, and when I wrote about the trade originally, I said, "Man, that is a lot to pay for a guy who's been hurt each of the last 2 years." And I mean, McCaffrey knows that. He knows that he's got to stay healthy for this trade to be great. And at least in my opinion, I think that one of the things that the Niners need to at least think about in games that are lopsided, those guys have got to take a seat, in the fourth quarter of games. If they're way ahead or, in the case of even being way behind, you've got to live to fight another day. And that's why I hope that those guys get spotted pretty consistently down the stretch.
Why do you think, Peter, that Kyle Shanahan has been so reluctant to do it? I know the way he's explained it, but out here in some of these games, even when they're relatively close games, but the 49ers are in control, play here, play there, maybe a series here or there, he's reluctant to do it. Why do you think that is?
Because I think that in the NFL, weird things happen. And if you're up 9 points with 10 minutes to go and you have the ball, Kyle Shanahan is not thinking, "Oh, we got this game." He's thinking, look, most likely our opponent is going to touch the ball twice more in this game. We can't take our foot off the gas. I totally understand it. I get it. I don't think I'm really talking about that. I think I'm talking about when it's more than a 2-score game at any point in the fourth quarter.
Well, he said even 3 scores sometimes he doesn't feel comfortable with. Like, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Like 17 with 10 minutes left, he won't do it.
That's when I would disagree with him, because I think you have to be pragmatic in these cases, and you have to know how hard Deebo Samuel goes, how hard Brandon Ayuk goes, and obviously McCaffrey. And, I think, and look, you don't want to think this way, but I find myself thinking this way all the time. If you've got a 3-score lead in the fourth quarter, yes, you still have a chance to lose the game. The Detroit Lions scored 17 points in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter against the Bears the other day. So weird things can happen, and I get that. However, I'm just simply trying to play the percentages. And I would rather risk the game getting closer. Just because you don't play Deebo Samuel with 13 minutes to go in a series where they have a 3-score lead. It doesn't mean he's out of the game for good if they give up a pick six or if the opponent scores quickly on the next series. You can put him back in the game. But to me, I just think that the odds are in your favor to rest those guys when you can, because the next game, it's a 0-0 game at the start of it, and you don't want Deebo Samuel having a hamstring strain and being 76%. So that's how I would look at it. Yeah,
it's fascinating, the debate, and you mentioned the Lions game against the Bears, and Kyle Shanahan spoke to the season opening game that they played in Detroit, and it was Dan Campbell's first game as the head coach, and they were up 41-17 with 10 minutes left, and stuff happened. They missed an onside kick. All of a sudden, it's 41-33, and the Lions are going down to try and tie it down 8, and he said, hey, I'm a little worried now because of that. It's etched in my mind maybe forever.
And, I don't blame him for thinking that way. I really don't. But I think the one issue that you have is, I don't know, I keep coming back to the word pragmatic. And I just think you got to be pragmatic in these cases. And you can always pick out a game that happened, one game in the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know. I don't even, I remember that game, but I don't remember the specifics of it. So I understand he's coach and he wants to make sure that he plays to win the game. And I totally get it, but it's a little bit of a different story. This isn't, I remember somebody asked Bruce Bochy at the end of this year, you guys obviously in the Bay Area are familiar with Marcus Semien. And somebody asked Bochy at the end of this year, hey, look, don't you think you should rest Marcus Semien because he plays every day, he never comes out of the game, and all that stuff. And Bochy just said, hey, this is our guy. He takes pride in being there every day for his team and all that stuff. And I was thinking to myself, okay, if it would have a deleterious effect on the team for Semien to sit out a couple of games toward the end of the year when you already know you're going to the playoffs, I get that. That's a little bit different though than football, because on any play in football, and I'm not saying you can't get hurt in baseball, you can get hurt in any sport, but you can get hurt on any play in football. And it's significantly harder to get hurt in baseball. And I just look at the 49ers right now and I say, what gives you the best chance for Deebo Samuel to be healthy, not necessarily in Game 11, but in Game 20? Because Game 20 is going to be perhaps the most important game of his life.
And Peter King here on 95.7 The Game, and I think part of that factors into the fact that they now play just a tiny bit more than 2 days from now at Seattle, Thanksgiving night, the third of 3 games. What do you make of where Seattle is right now, and how much does the short week play into exactly what you're talking about, Peter, in terms of maybe spotting guys a little bit more heading into a short week like this?
Well, I think I would look at that a little bit differently this week, and I'll tell you why. Because Seattle has just come off a hugely disheartening loss to the Rams. They've now been swept by the Rams, and this is Thursday night, their game of the year. And it isn't only this, but if you look at Seattle's schedule, they go Niners, Dallas, Niners, Eagles. So, I mean, I think, I don't even know what the line is on Thursday night, but just my gut feeling, they'll probably be the underdog in every one of those games. And you would think that, oh my God, for Seattle to even go 2-2 in that stretch, which I think they have to do to maintain a realistic playoff chance, to go 2-2 in those games, you really should win the home games, And so to me, this game is really, really important to them. And I guess the way I look at it is this. The 49ers play a short week game, and obviously they're going to have a bunch of guys who are not feeling great. It's on the road. It's in a place where you can't hear all that stuff. I get it. But also, the 49ers have the mini bye after the game. They got 10 days before their next game. As much as I hear players, and I totally understand why players don't like the Thursday game, Mike McCarthy, this was probably 8 years ago or whatever, I remember talking to him after they won a game on a Sunday, and they were headed into Detroit to play on Thanksgiving. And I said, man, rough week for you. And he goes, hey, I've got a different thought on it. And he said, and I've shared it with the players, I really like the Thursday game. And I like the Thursday game because especially later in the year, you've got 10 days after this game. And he said, if we're really beat up, I'm not going to put the pads on at all in any of those 10 days. So we're going to practice maintenance right now. And so look, I'm sure Kyle Shanahan, if some guy is not well, if he's got a strain this or strain that, he's not wearing the pads, or if he does, he's just walking through. And so, after this game. So I don't think it's a terrible thing to play on Thursday. I agree with you. I think you've got to be cognizant of your guys, and I understand it. But you got 10 days after this game, and you're playing a game that if you somehow can knock off the Seahawks in this game, you haven't eliminated them for the division, but you've got a huge lead going down the stretch, and you've got the return match in Santa Clara when you're going to be, at that point, at least 2 games ahead in the division.
Yeah, there's no doubt the 49ers are looking ahead and loving the fact that they have the 10 days before the game at Philadelphia as well. And 6.5-point favorites, San Francisco, for Thursday night on Thanksgiving in Seattle. I want to get
that's a lot.
It is.
That's a lot. I don't gamble, but I'll tell you one thing. I would steer clear of that one. I wouldn't really love that one because I think the 49ers are going to win, but man, that means you're going to win. You're basically going to win by a touchdown or more. I don't know. Hey, whatever. They could win by 20. I don't know, but that's an interesting line.
Yeah, no doubt, especially going up there for a night game. I think you're spot on with that. Peter, I want to get your thoughts on the defense the last 2 weeks, the Jacksonville game for the 49ers and then the game against Tampa Bay, and also just the impact of Chase Young, where you've seen him make an impact and where you've seen others along the defense really accept the challenge of needing to be better. And then you've got the Steve Wilks component, whether it's much ado about nothing or not, him moving down to the sideline, but it seems like everybody's really vibing off of the fact that he was willing to do it for the team.
Yeah, I don't know. We've talked about that a little bit. I think honestly, I just think it's one of the more overrated things in football, where a guy coaches from. But hey, good for the Niners. They've been better when he changed spots. So fine with that. But I think the one thing I would say about what I've seen in the Niners since in the 2 games that they've had Chase Young. Here's the thing that nobody talks about very much, but you always hear, the guys, Bobby Wagner, when he played for 1 year behind Aaron Donald, he used to say, he said, what nobody talks about when you're talking about the job of a linebacker, because everybody looks at the job of a linebacker and nobody ever says, hey, if you've got great people in front of you, you're going to be a lot better as a linebacker. And that's kind of how I look what is happening right now with the Niners. Look at Fred Warner has had 2 monster games. He was great against Tampa. And he's had 2 monster games since Chase Young showed up. And I'm not totally crediting Chase Young. I am saying that the sum of what is happening on that defensive line right now is huge. And it's obviously better than, just the individual parts. It isn't only Young and Bosa. It is the tackle position as well. And if you look at sometimes the freedom that Fred Warner has, that Greenlaw's had, even though he's been banged up some, if you look at their ability to run in space, I mean, look, I was thinking the other day, if I had to, and this is an absolute knee-jerk reaction, but to me, it's right now Myles Garrett and Fred Warner for Defensive Player of the Year.
Wow.
I mean, that's how great Warner has been. But Fred Warner will tell you right now, he'll say, he goes, listen, I'm sure, and I'm sure people have talked to him about it there. I'm sure he would say, listen, my job is immensely helped by what's happening right in front of me, because offensive lines cannot block 49ers with 4 guys. They just can't. And then with the extra guy looking at the linebackers, they need to have all 5 guys blocking that line. And so that's why guys like Fred Warner have the ability, at least part of the ability, to go up and make plays and clean things up the way they do.
Fantastic breakdown. Peter, I could spend all day with you, and I was looking to ask you about who had a worse week, Carissa Thompson or Zach Wilson, but unfortunately...
Hey, listen, if I could just say one other thing.
Peter, I'm getting the sweat here from the producers, but I would love to get your thoughts on this. No, Peter, your opinion is far better than anything I'll do over the next 2 hours.
Okay, but I just wanted to say one thing about both of the people who you just mentioned.
Thank
Number
you.
one, look, I went to journalism school, so I don't like what Carissa Thompson did. I'm not sure we got to throw her out with the trash or anything like that, but I do think that Fox and Amazon have really kind of insulted their viewers by not commenting on this a lot. They're just hoping it goes away, which I think is ridiculous. But and about the New York Jets and about Zach Wilson, look, it was due time, but what they were trying to do is save this kid's career. He never had to play with any criticism before at high school in Utah or at Brigham Young, and then he gets to New York, and all of a sudden, he gets chewed up for supper. So I feel for him, but look, the Jets absolutely unequivocally had to do it. He had 3 touchdown drives in 65 possessions. I mean, that's all-time worst.
Right.
So, they just had to make the change. But anyway, sorry to prattle on.
No, you nailed it. And I guess Carissa Thompson only messed up once, and he messed up 62 times. So I think we have your answer. Peter King, you are fantastic. We appreciate you every week. Happy Thanksgiving, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Hey, thanks a lot, fellas. I appreciate it.